Hi, I'm Kshmeya Chopra, and I'm a pre-med sophomore at the University of Tampa. This past summer, I conducted research at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Pelmis and Kiara Taggart, who helped train me at the beginning of the project and then worked alongside me to bring this project to an end. And she was at the EAS conference with me too, presenting this poster. So, phthalocyanines are large, highly conjugated macrocyclic molecules, and because of their extended pi systems, they absorb strongly in the red and the near IR region of the spectrum. That makes them useful in applications like photodynamic therapy, optoelectronics, catalysis, and sensing. Chemists are especially interested in them because their small structural changes, like the central metal or substituents, can dramatically change their properties.
And I noted in your poster that you focused on photostability. Why is light stability such an important property for these materials?
So many applications expose these molecules to light for a long period of time, and if they degrade quickly, they lose function and can even form unwanted byproducts. So photostability directly affects how useful and safe these materials are in real-world applications, especially biomedical ones.
And I think it would be good if we could talk about what was the core question that you and your team were trying to answer with this project?
I would say our core question was wanting to understand how the central metals, so for us, it was zinc versus indium, and the degree of fluorination influence photostability. Specifically, we wanted to know whether fluorination and metal identity could make phthalocyanines more resistant to light-induced degradation.
Perfect. And I noted that you monitor degradation using UV vis spectroscopy at the Q band. Why is the Q band such a useful handle for tracking these molecules?
So the Q band corresponds to the main electronic transition of phthalocyanines and is very sensitive to structural changes. As the molecule degrades, the Q band decreases in intensity or shifts, making it an excellent handle for tracking photodegradation over time.
Just in general terms, I was hoping you could walk us through your experimental setup related to the photo degradation.
Yeah, of course. So we had a lamp that mimics the sunlight at 2 suns intensity, and we collected measurements over a 2-hour period. And we had UV and IR filters that were used to avoid heating of the PC solutions.
We spend a good amount of time on this podcast talking about LCMS and GCMS. A lot of time on chromatography and mass spec in general. Would you be able to explain to the audience the core differences between spectroscopy and spectrometry?
Spectroscopy measures how matter interacts with electromagnetic radiation, like UV vis absorption, and then spectrometry typically involves detecting ions and measuring mass to charge ratios, such as in mass spectrometry. In this project, we use spectroscopy, not spectrometry. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's a good overview just so people know because they might come across both of these terms and confuse them, or they might only be familiar with one of them. So I appreciate you getting into that. To stick with LCMS for a moment, if you wanted to identify degradation products instead of just measuring bulk loss, would you turn to LCMS or maybe another separation technique?
I think I would move toward LCMS, especially HRMS and MSMS, because UV vis only tells us bulk loss and not what new species are forming.
I know that DMSO was one of the solvents you utilized. Could you tell us about the role that solvent played in your photostability experiments?
So, solvent affects aggregation and solvation. DMSO tends to keep the phthalocyanines more monomeric, while ethyl acetate can promote aggregation. Aggregation can shield molecules from light, which changes apparent photostability.
So, did you see clear differences in degradation between the two solvents, and what do you think happened there?
Yeah, we did. We generally observed less degradation in aggregated systems, supporting the idea that aggregation can be protective against photodegradation.
And I think you may have just answered this next one, but beyond UV vis, the techniques you would next use to characterize the degradation products, you think it would be the high resolution mass spec or LCMS or maybe NMR?
Yeah, I would definitely move toward LCMS, specifically high resolution mass spectrometry and tandem MSMS. UVVS tells us that degradation is happening, but not what is forming, as I said. So LCMS would allow for separation of intact phthalocyanines from smaller photoproducts, while HRMS would give us exact masses to help identify molecular formulas. NMR could be useful for isolated products, but given low solubility and mixture complexity, MS-based techniques could be more practical initially.
If someone wanted to separate intact nines
That's needs.
from their breakdown products, what chromatographic mode might work best, whether it's reverse phase, normal phase, or maybe even size exclusion?
I think I'd expect reverse phase chromatography to work best. Intact phthalocyanines are large, hydrophobic, and highly conjugated, while degradation products are likely smaller and more polar. The polarity difference should give good retention contrast. Normal phase could be challenging because of solubility, and size exclusion might lack sufficient resolution for closely related species.
Do the compounds present any special challenges from an analytical perspective, whether it's sticking to columns or low solubility or aggregation?
Phthalocyanines tend to aggregate, especially depending on solvent, which complicates both spectroscopy and chromatography. They also have limited solubility and can adsorb to surfaces or columns, leading to peak tailing or signal loss. These issues require careful solvent choice and concentration control.
And throughout the workflow, it doesn't have to be limited to those challenges you just mentioned, but what would you say was the most challenging aspect of this project for you?
I would say the most challenging aspect was maintaining consistent experimental conditions while accounting for aggregation effects was the most challenging. Interpreting spectral changes require distinguishing true chemical degradation from changes due to aggregation or solvent effects. Ensuring reproducibility across different compounds and solvents was also really technically demanding.
This podcast, we're typically speaking to early undergraduates who are just starting their chemistry careers at universities. Do you have any advice for those students who might have an interest in photochemistry or analytical chemistry in general?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore myself in undergrad, and I would say the advice I would have for students would be focusing on the fundamentals. Spectroscopy and physical chemistry matter more than people think. And I would also say, like, don't be intimidated by instrumentation. Learning why something behaves a certain way is more important than just like mindlessly collecting data. And then I guess the last thing I would say, which I really struggled with, was being patient with experiments that especially don't behave how they're supposed to at first, because a lot of real research is just troubleshooting and interpretation. And yeah, persistence goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's definitely a common thread, it seems. Also, the patience aspect in terms of not getting frustrated because at times it'll feel like more is going wrong than is going right. Was there anything else you would like people to know about this research project?
I would say the only thing to keep in mind would be how easy it is to miss how relevant this is beyond just chemistry. Photostability directly affects whether these molecules could actually work safely in something like photodynamic therapy. So understanding degradation isn't just academic, it has like biomedical implications, which I think is really important.
Look, Kshmeya, I really appreciate your time today, and thanks so much for sharing your work with the audience.
Thank you so much.